Here are 5 things that I unfortunately hear all too often that make me literally clutch my pearls as a fertility specialist. Part 1. Part 1 because there's a long list of things that grate my nerves as a fertility specialist, but also so that we can have a part 2 where I have an excuse to wear another pearl encrusted outfit. So number 1 on the list is when patients are self-medicating with progesterone, either because they have an irregular cycle, and so by taking the progesterone, they're bringing on a period, a fake period, a withdrawal bleed, so it's not actually helping them to ovulate, or they're taking it throughout their cycle or at a certain part of their cycle because they have a shortened luteal phase. And what they don't realize is that they can often be throwing off their lining and making it impossible to get pregnant because there is a very narrow window of implantation that is impacted by exposure to progesterone. So if you don't know the right part of the cycle to be actually taking the progesterone, it not only isn't going to help you get pregnant, it may prevent pregnancy. And this brings me to point number 2, because it's kind of related. When I hear patients say, I get regular periods, but so-and-so told me I'm not ovulating, it makes absolutely no sense. You can't get a period, you can't get a breakdown of your lining and a bleed in a regular cyclical fashion unless it was preceded by ovulation, which resulted in increase in your progesterone levels, and then eventually those levels drop, and that allows your lining, which built up during that menstrual cycle, to then break down. So if you didn't detect the ovulation and you were checking on ovulation predictor kits, it might be that you just missed it, right? Because what those ovulation predictor kits are picking up are signals from your pituitary gland called luteinizing hormone, or LH, that are released in a pulsatile fashion. So it is possible that you could be missing it, and it just doesn't make sense to tell someone they're not ovulating if they get a period. Okay, the next one is kind of a PSA for anyone who has a fibroid uterus. If you have fibroids and you are planning to undergo an egg retrieval, either for egg freezing or embryo freezing preventatively, or because you need IVF to overcome infertility, make sure that the fibroids are not preventing access, vaginal access to your ovaries. What I mean is when you have a large fibroid, it can cast a lot of shadows, can make it hard to see your ovaries, and it can also make it hard to get to the ovaries because sometimes the fibroid is intervening between the vaginal wall and the cervix and the actual ovaries, kind of pushing it out of the way. This is really important because if you can't see the ovaries on a transvaginal ultrasound, how are you going to monitor that a patient is responding appropriately? How are you going to really pinpoint when to do the trigger shot and what's ideal in terms of the timing of the cycle? If I see a patient for a consult and I do their scan and I just know I can't see the ovary, it's going to be really hard to get to the ovary, I don't want to struggle. I want to set this patient up for success. And there have been times where I will recommend that they get a myomectomy because the location and the size of the fibroid is such that you're going to have a suboptimal outcome potentially with that egg retrieval cycle. So it definitely makes me clutch my pearls if I see a patient for second opinion, or I hear about a patient who had a prior cycle where they went through the whole thing and then I'm scanning them and thinking, how did anyone ever get to these ovaries? So if you have fibroids, that is a question to ask if you're seeing a fertility doctor. Do you think it's going to be easy to see them, to monitor them appropriately, and more importantly, to be able to access them safely and easily during time of retrieval? Okay, this next one's so bad that I'm afraid my collar is going to fall off. Suppressing the immune system blindly before someone's first transfer for absolutely no reason. I can't tell you the number of times that I've heard about this when patients come to me after having treatments elsewhere. It irks me to no end because we don't really have a good understanding of the interplay between the immune system and an early developing pregnancy and implantation of an embryo. And there needs to be a healthy level of inflammation for an embryo to successfully implant. And by dampening the immune response blindly, needlessly, we don't know, we might be doing more harm than good. Maybe you're detracting from a patient's chance of success with an embryo transfer. So unless there's a real reason or some sort of justification, and we don't really have great tests to actually justify treatments like this, but there could be rare circumstances where it may be warranted to try. But barring that rare outlier type of situation, it just doesn't make sense. Okay, the final thing that made me clutch my pearls this week, and probably next week and every week after that, is seeing patients come to me with low AMH, low reserve. Often the testing was not done for any particular reason. It was just part of a fertility checkup. And them coming into my office so upset, thinking that they are destined to have fertility issues. They will never have children because they have a very low AMH for their age. Often this is in the setting of them being on long-term birth control for many years, which may be falsely suppressing their AMH. Newsflash, your AMH does not tell us anything about your egg quality, your ability to ovulate a healthy egg that will turn into a healthy embryo. And to be honest, if you're someone who ovulates regularly and has a menstrual cycle roughly every month, you're on a level playing field with everyone else your age because everyone is ovulating one egg each cycle. So don't let anyone tell you that because you have low ovarian reserve, a low AMH level, that you're definitely infertile and you're going to struggle to build your family, because that's simply not true. The studies prove that it's not true. AMH is not a predictor of live birth when it comes to trying to conceive on your own and even in IUI cycles. Now I'm all riled up, so that's enough for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, where I'll go over more things that make me clutch my pearls.